Start recording. Okay, you're good now.
I'm good now.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a brief overview of Space Marines. In this presentation, I have a few objectives I'd like to get through. First, I'd like to establish a brief understanding of Space Marines, their history, and a small overview of the Horus Heresy. Next, I'd like to go through all the founding Space Marine chapters / legions. These are the main Space Marines in the tabletop. Then I'd like to cover some important chapters from later foundings, finally ending with a few honorable mentions, some chapters that are not super important to the lore or don't fall into some of the standard foundings. There will be some breaks for questions. Please save your questions for those portions, as my rhythm and speaking is all I have going for me. I'd like to start with an overview of the Imperium, the human faction in 40k. So, the Imperium is led by the Emperor, a very powerful psychic being and warlord who conquered Earth and through his empire over 1,000,000 planets. Now, he couldn't have done this without Space Marines, who are his elite troops, and he needed generals for his Space Marine armies, or as they'll be referred to later, chapters or legions. So he is also a very smart scientist, and he used his own genes to create 20 sons, all of whom were genetically engineered to lead their own specific chapter with their own specializations in warfare. However, the Chaos Gods spread his sons across the galaxy, leading them to not be raised by the Emperor, and this is where the seeds of chaos and the Horus Heresy were planted for most of them. Space Marines are the elite troops of the Imperium, and later on for Chaos as well. They're all genetically engineered using special genes and organs collectively called gene seed. As such, they're considered mutants, which leads to some disdain from certain factions, but generally everyone in the Imperium is pretty respectful of Space Marines, and some even treat them as like demigods. Okay. I have briefly mentioned the event. But the Horus Heresy was the penultimate event for the Imperium. Horus is one of the Emperor's sons. All the Emperor's sons are called Primarchs, by the way. He convinced half his brothers to overthrow the Empire. They did not need a ton of convincing, as they had all been fucked over by the Emperor previously. This split the Imperium forces in half and gave rise to a greater threat of the forces of chaos. In this little picture, Horus is the second one in on the left. While the Imperium did win the main battle, the Siege of Terra, the Emperor was seriously wounded. Horus died, and so did two of the Loyalist Primarchs, who we will talk more about later. One of his other sons, Guilliman, who is the one on the left, he's the Primarch of the Ultramarines. He later on was put in charge of the Imperium, and he wrote this kind of book, which is like a guidebook for Space Marines called the Codex Astartes. Now, generally, most chapters that are loyalist still follow the rules of the Codex Astartes. A lot of them don't. One of the main rules, for example, is that all Space Marine chapters going forward have to only have 1,000 Space Marines in their chapter. This was so that another Horus Heresy would be a lot harder because all of the chapters would be on the same footing. So if one chapter fell to chaos, they were not immensely powerful compared to the others. Yep. I lost my place. All of the Loyalist Space Marine factions would break off their excess units into new chapters that became successor chapters. And whenever a lot of these successor chapters happened at once, they called it a founding. So in the current lore of 40k, there are 26 foundings with tons of new chapters, along with a bunch of other chapters that have unknown origins or no chapter creation. New foundings are deemed necessary for a number of reasons, such as they need a standing army in a certain region, counterattacking specific enemies that are rising in power, or generally just crusading. just allowing the crusade to go farther and farther by splitting off more units. The gene seed for these new foundings is generally um, altered from the first founding chapters. So we'll talk a little bit more about like that and how that kind of relates to it. Great example is Black Templars are successor chapters to the Imperial Fists. The Black Templar gene seed is altered from the Imperial Fist gene seed. There are a few with unknown origins, a few chapters with unknown origins that are speculated to have gene seed from some of the legions that went chaos. And because of this speculation, there is usually some distrust whenever an established founding or established chapter meets a new kind of unknown chapter or a newer chapter. So some of the newer chapters are generally not liked until they're uh, like more prominent or have done some great deeds. Now let's get into the specifics on some of these chapters. Just kidding. Lies and deception. Before I go further, I should mention the 2nd and the 11th chapters from the first founding do not exist. There's an in-lore reason. The meta reasoning is that Games Workshop had this idea to leave 2 chapters blank so that players could create their own in the lore and paint them however they want, and they would leave one for Chaos and one for Loyalists. The lore reason is that nobody fucking knows. It's speculated that they did something to anger the Emperor, and he was like, "All right, well, I'm gonna kill you and your whole legion and erase you from history." Primarchs in a lot of the books do actually speak of these like forgotten chapters and forgotten Primarchs, but they're really quick to like kind of get away from that. Like, stop talking about that because the Emperor's gonna come fuck us up if he hears you talking like that. Going forward to the rest of these slides, I do want to say that any Loyalist faction is going to have a green background to their slide. Any Chaos faction is going to have a black background to their slide. Oh, excuse me. First up, first chapter, Dark Angels. Rad as fuck. Their Primarch is Lion L. Johnson. Their chapter master is Azrael. The Dark Angels are melee specialists, and they're also master, quote-unquote, interrogators. Lionel Johnson is actually currently alive. He is leading the chapter. He's one of 2 Primarchs in current 40k lore for the Loyalists that is alive and is around, and you can actually play him in the tabletop. He is a massive asshole. I love him. So the thing with the Dark Angels is that when the Horus Heresy happened, they had a small section of their chapter go to Chaos. They were called the Fallen. The Dark Angels do not want anyone to know that. They're extremely paranoid about people finding out that a section of them fell to Chaos. They hate that. So when I say interrogators, they brainwash anyone they suspect of being like or having any knowledge of the Fallen. Or they just kill them. That's usually the quicker method. Or they just kill them. So because the Fallen exists, the Dark Angels kind of do their own thing. They don't really care too much for like follow Imperium laws or anything like that. They're just kind of going out there killing Xenos and doing their own thing. Like I said, 2nd chapter doesn't exist. 3rd chapter, Emperor's Children. These guys are the horny boys. They are perfectionists in everything they do. Fulgrim, their Primarch, he was a master duelist. He is generally regarded as like the most beautiful of the Primarchs, maybe outside of like Sanguinius. After the heresy, the Legion fell to the chaos god of excess or hedonism, Slaanesh. This mutated a lot of them forever. Fulgrim lost a battle to Slaanesh, and he's forced to carry on a cursed sword that contains a demon and possesses him. And he is now a demon Primarch with multiple arms, wings, and a snake-like body. Cool thing about the Emperor's Children is their main battle line is consisted of these. They're called Noise Marines. So essentially, the ideology is that Slaanesh is about excess. If it's silent, there is a lack of excess. Therefore, Slaanesh loves loud noises. So they were what's called noise marines. They use sonic weaponry as their main weapon, and they have a saying that's the silence offends Slanesh, and they'll usually just like pop off at whoever's in front of them. Uh, they're pretty sick. They're pretty sick. They do rely heavily on cultists and Slanesh demons a lot, and they are mainly an infantry-based army. Fourth Legion is Iron Warriors. The Primarch is Perturabo, the perpetual incel. Um, Perturabo went to Chaos because he was really like never recognized for his accomplishments. Um, Mainly, he was in a rivalry with Dorn of the Imperial Fists, and Dorn was kind of given all of these rewards, and Perturabo was sent on like semi-suicide missions. But the Iron Warriors are dope. They have these hazard markings all over them. They are siege specialists. They're experts in heavy weaponry, and they are also very adept at using demons. So they will often capture demons, shove them into machines of war, and use them as like mechanized units. Um, they also use a lot of tanks, a lot of artillery, and a lot of dreadnoughts in their army. So they're big boys with big weapons who use demons. They're really cool. Fifth chapter is White Scars. Primarch is Jagatai Khan. This chapter is entirely based around speed. They've mastered guerrilla tactics and jet bikes to cleave their way through other armies and disappear before they could be attacked. They have a heavy Mongolian like aesthetic too, which is really sick with the Space Marine side of it. So they are also known as the Laughing Killers, because as they're like riding through battle, you can constantly hear them laughing in their helmets about the slaughter and the fight. And it's unclear if it's because they actually really love fighting or if it's just an intimidation tactic to get people to be afraid of them. Um, Very little is known about Jagatai Khan, and even less is confirmed. He is very stoic. In most of the books, he's actually really quiet. He doesn't say a lot. And he likes to be underestimated. There is a part where he is talking to Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, and Fulgrim's bragging about how he's the best swordsman in the Imperium and how he could easily beat Jagatai Khan. And Jagatai's like, well, you've never seen me fight, so you'll never know. I know how you fight. You flaunt it however you want. I will sneak up on you and kill you, and you'll never know about it. So I love that about him. That's fucking awesome. Uh, Currently, it's unknown about where he is. Um, his homeworld was attacked by the Dark Eldar. He does have somewhat of a personal grudge against them, so he chased them into the warp, and he is yet to be seen again. Um, the White Scars are still fighting without him, and they are still loyalist. Next up is Space Wolves. They're Vikings in space. That's pretty much it. They have some units that can turn into half werewolves. That's these guys on the right. They're great trackers. They use a lot of wolves in combat. They're melee specialists. They use a lot of axe weaponry, mainly chain axes. I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory. Leman Russ, their Primarch, is currently missing. It looks as if he had a premonition during a feast, then he just ran off and disappeared. Remember, I talked about the Codex Astartes a little bit and that 1,000-unit chapters thing that Gilliman put in place. The Space Wolves flat out ignore it. They're like, fuck that. We'll have as many as we want because we're dope. And Gilliman just doesn't want to have that fight with them because he knows the Space Wolves are too loyal to turn traitor, so he doesn't give a fuck. That's kind of cool. Otherwise, these guys are just really cool looking. There's some interesting lore with Leman Russ, but it's not my cup of tea. Seventh is Imperial Fists. The Primarch is Rogel Dorn. He is okay. I said Lionel Johnson is an asshole. Rogel Dorn is just like a bigger asshole. There's no other way to say it. He is brutally honest. And what I mean by that is he does not possess the ability to lie. Like he's never told a lie in his life because he doesn't see the point. He also has no sense of humor. They are the loyalist counterpart to the Iron Warriors. They use heavy weaponry, tanks, artillery, but instead of being siege oriented, they're more defense oriented. So Dorn and his Imperial Fist actually built the Emperor's Palace, which is one of Perturabo's big problems with them because he wanted to do that. Um, Dorn is pretty hated among his brothers outside of Gilliman uh, because of his personality. Particularly the Alpha Legion, Alfarius, hates Dorn because he does not believe he can trust a man who cannot lie. The Dorn is believed to be dead. His ship was attacked, and when they went to where he was, there was no trace of the enemy, no trace of Dorn outside of his hand, which was laying on the floor. It's been collected. It is now an Iron Fist relic, which means they do bring it into battle occasionally. And I believe all of the chapter masters' names are carved into the hand, if I'm remembering right. Um, Eighth Legion is the Night Lords. Primarch is Conrad Kurz. Night Lords are the shittiest scumbags to ever be scumbaggy in the scumbaggy universe. They're torturous assholes. They only take fights where they have overwhelming odds, and they kill civilians whenever possible. Um, this is mainly because the planet that Kurz is from and the place where they get a lot of the recruits is pretty much like Gotham City. Kurz was the Batman of Gotham City. But when he left to join the Emperor, the criminals took over the planet. So now it's almost entirely crime and like based. So all of the Night Lords that he gets now from his home planet are all rapists and murderers. They pretty much send their worst is like a death sentence is to join the Night Lords. Um they canonically these guys are the biggest losers in 40K. They very rarely win any fights. Um and it's very common in the tabletop for someone who's playing Night Lords whenever they lose to be like, I didn't lose, I just role played as Night Lords. Um, Kurz is actually a really tragic figure in this. Like I said, there's the Batman aspect where yeah, he was the Batman of a universe, and now he leads a group full of Arkham inmates. Essentially, he fucking hates his Legion. He also, once the Emperor showed up, started getting like premonitions, and all of his premonitions were about the Horus Heresy and about his own death, both of which came true. Conrad Kurz is currently dead. He was killed by an assassin sent by the Emperor, and that was kind of his big arc, was that, of course, my own father would send an assassin. This proves everything I thought to be true about him. But yeah, they're cool. They're still fighting. They're just really, really not that strong in the lore. Ninth is Blood Angels. Blood Angels are kind of fucking rad. Not gonna lie. They have their Primarch Sanguinius, and their current chapter master is Dante. The defining trait of the Blood Angels is that they. Okay. Sanguinius was killed by Horus in the Horus Heresy. This caused like a mutation in the Blood Angels gene seed, essentially. And it's called the Black Rage. So pretty much they will eventually start to like decay and lose control, and they will see everyone in front of them as Horus standing over Sanguinius's body. And they will just start fucking mowing people down. Now they can stave off this Black Rage with another flaw in their gene seed called the Red Thirst. That's right, these are the vampires. Um, they will become mindless killing machines after a while if they do not drink the blood of their enemies. Um, Also, kind of interesting to note, Dante, their chapter master, is currently the oldest living natural space marine. He is 1,500 years old, which creates like a very much like a old man just wants to die a cool death thing with him, where he constantly goes on suicide missions and he keeps just coming back out alive because he's kind of over being alive. Iron Hands. Iron Hands in the 10th chapter. The Primarch is Ferrus Manus. The Iron Hands have a really cool aesthetic. They are called Tech Marines. They believe that their flesh is weak, and they replace most of their body parts with bionics, which mainly includes like Doctor Octopus style arms to give them extra guns or melee weapons. They used heavy vehicles, and they use a lot of dreadnoughts, which everyone in the Imperium really respects dreadnoughts because it's pretty much like really old, like mostly dead Space Marines piloting these things. But Iron Hands believe like dreadnoughts are like the pinnacle. Like that's really fucking high up for a Space Marine to get. Um, Ferrus Manus is dead. He is the first Primarch to die. He is the first casualty of the Horus Heresy. Not total, but he's the first Primarch death of the Horus Heresy. He was killed by Fulgrim. He was decapitated in battle. His hammer then went to Perturabo. Next up is World Eaters.
Whoa.
Yeah, World Eaters are fucking sick. These guys are probably the most tragic of all of them. Angron in particular is incredibly tragic. He had really no choice or any like chance to get away from chaos. See, on his home planet, he was a slave in a gladiator arena, and he got implanted with these like dreadlock looking things in his head. They're called the butcher's nails. Pretty much what these do is that he feels immense pain anytime he feels any emotion that is not anger. And it's amped up to fucking 11 at all times. So it makes him an ornery son of a bitch. Because of this like anger, he did start putting them in the World Eaters chapter themselves, because he is an asshole. And this made them all angry motherfuckers. This made them pretty much prime targets for Khorne, the god of murder. They use primarily chain axes and demon troops as cannon fodder. There's very rarely they use ranged weaponry. I do want to talk about Karn the Betrayer. Karn the Betrayer is one of the coolest fucking guys in all of 40k lore. It is said that Khorne is the god of murder. He sits atop a throne made of skulls. It is said that he has a small pile of skulls next to his throne that is just from Karn. It is said Karn has killed over 1 million people with his bare like hands, like personally killed 1 million people. So yeah, they're really cool. Yeah, very tragic for what they look like. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What exactly is the chapter master versus the Primarch?
Okay, so the Primarch is the son of the Emperor.
Yeah, yeah.
The chapter master is usually the current leader. So most of the Primarchs are dead or gone. The chapter master is just the current leader of the chapter.
So was the Primarch once the chapter master? Is that how that works?
No, the chapter masters all came after the Horus Heresy, except for in Word Bearers. Word Bearers kind of set the tone for it, but they all kind of came after. So Dark Angels, for example, Lionel Johnson was asleep for a lot of the time, so Azrael was the de facto leader. Lionel Johnson only recently came back. And so now he is the leader, and like Azrael is like his like first captain kind of deal, but he still calls him the chapter master.
Okay. Is this just the tabletop game, or are there other forms of media?
There's other forms of media. Most of this is from the lore and from the tabletop. There's video games, there's books, there's the Henry Cavill TV show coming out. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of the lore mainly comes from codexes and books. I'm mainly talking about ones that you will see in tabletop more than others. Because like I said, there are 27 foundings. Each of those foundings is like 3 to 4 chapters. We're still in the first founding.
Okay.
Berg. Berg, any
So-
questions so far?
Yeah, are you free on Sunday?
Yeah,
Can I
why
take
was
you to
that?
dinner?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
cool.
Dylan, you had a question.
So you said there's like demons and vampires. Is there like, are there like mythological motherfuckers in this shit?
Yeah. So okay.
Because I know we're going over the Space Marines, but you're saying like these motherfuckers are vampires and they're fighting demons, and then they're. I know that there's like a whole separate subset of like what they're fighting and why they're even fighting, and you're just going over like who these dudes are. But like, I'm just interested in like, yo, they're just beating the shit out of each other. They're beating the shit out of demons and like what aliens and stuff. And I know it's like space D&D, but like what the fuck?
Okay. I can do this. I can do this in a compact way. Hold on. The vampires is just blood angels, and they're not technically vampires. They don't need it to live. They'll just go insane if they don't drink blood. That's the difference. Demons is like the main term for like any like direct warp being under like a chaos god, essentially. So when I say demons, it could be referring to Slanesh demons, Khorne demons, Nurgle demons, or Tzeentch demons. Yeah.
Okay.
Khorne has the one that looks like devils. All the other ones are like freakish monsters.
Hell yeah.
And the demons is like a wide swath. Like a Khorne demon, there's like 20 different forms. So that's the umbrella term for them.
Yeah.
There are Xenos races like elves, orcs, Tau, which are the blue guys.
Yeah.
Necrons, Tyranids. There's a ton. What you need to remember is that most of these Space Marine chapters are, in the current lore, very widespread, and they're all doing different things all around the galaxy. And the galaxy is fucking huge. You need to also remember that Space Marines are not involved in every single battle that is happening. It's actually mainly Imperial Guard, or there's Xenos fighting Xenos and Chaos fighting Xenos. Like, the Imperium is not connected in every single battle that's taking place.
Now, are there Space Marine chapters that have like blended with these monsters?
Absolutely not. That's fucking heresy.
There's
There's
two,
there's Chaos
or
Marines. There's Chaos Marines are like demon infested. So Angron and the World Eaters are all under Khorne. The Night Lords are undivided, but they still fuck with demons and shit.
Hell yeah.
But like as far as like Xenos, no. Most of the Xenos wouldn't have them. The only one that would be Tau, and a Space Marine meeting a Tau is like me with a club standing over a baby seal. I'm gonna hit it. So
Okay.
yeah, they don't really like go outside of the Imperium that much unless it's chaos.
I got you.
All right.
Okay.
Ultramarines, baby.
That's not his name.
That's not real.
That's his name. Yeah, so 13 chapters, Ultramarines. Their prime arc is Rabute Gilliman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Rabute Gilliman is how you say it. That's Rowboat Girly Man. Their chapter master is Marnius Calgar. These guys are the closest you can get to a main character faction in 40k. They are on all of the art. They are the pictures from most of the Space Marine units in the tabletop. They're all over 40k. This is mainly because they are the jack of all trades. They can do just about anything. Gilliman is the current leader of the Imperium since the Emperor turned into a corpse.
What? All right.
Shut up. I will. I have more question areas. Save it. Write it down. Their big strengths, and this is actually really interesting. It's one of the reasons I like Ultramarines is that they're actually their biggest strength is outside of combat. See, Gilliman's philosophy, because he was raised on a noble planet, like under nobility, is that eventually the warfare and the fighting will stop. Eventually, there will be a galaxy to rule. So Gilliman trains them not just in fighting, but also in philosophy and statesmanship and diplomacy. Um, like he makes them well-rounded so that they can be rulers of these planets and not just soldiers on them. He is Gilliman is a master of efficiency and logistics, and he is, like I said, currently in charge of the Imperium, mainly because he was the first Loyalist Primarch to show up in the 41st millennium, because he was mortally wounded and got revived by this really cool armor he is wearing that someone threw onto him.
Dude,
that is a whole other thing.
Dude, I got so many questions now.
Okay, let me finish up this Ultramarines part, and I will field some extra questions because I know I'm throwing Ultramarines are where I knew there was going to be an issue. So Corpse, this actually goes back to your thing. Marnius Calgar is the current chapter master of the Ultramarines. This guy is the star of the fucking show. I love Marnius Calgar. Marnius Calgar was chapter master of the Ultramarines before Gilliman was revived. So he was in charge of the Ultramarines. Gilliman revived, and Gilliman asked Marnius Calgar if he could take over the Ultramarines. And Marnius Calgar was like, what? How am I going to say no? Because you're fucking Gilliman. And then he had them start building like logistics and stuff, and then he eventually became like regent of the Imperium, and he gave like chapter master status essentially back to Calgar, and Calgar now leads the Ultramarines in most of the fighting, whereas Gilliman does do some fighting here and there, but he's mainly in charge of like managing the Empire. Calgar has some of the biggest dick energy in 40k. I know it's hard to tell. He's actually a quad amputee. Calgar has lost both of his arms and both of his legs. And instead of replacing his arms with normal robot hands, he was like, fuck it. Attach miniguns to him too. And that's what he did. He's got miniguns attached to his power armor and his robot arms. He leads the Victress Guard, which are these guys on the right, who are sick as fuck. It's the coolest armor in 40k. And Ultramarines were also, before the Heresy, the biggest of the chapters. And because of the Codex Astartes rules that Gilliman put in place, they have the most successor chapters in the later foundings because they were so large and they have to keep cutting off excess of them. All right. I will field some questions.
Are there any real guns in 40k?
Yes, the Tau use them.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, humans use bolters, which are pretty much just really big guns that explode on impact.
Holy shit. How the fuck did this nerd get revived by armor?
Okay. So during the Heresy, Gilliman was fighting Lorgar, who is another Primarch we will talk about. I swear we will talk about Lorgar. And he was fighting Angron. And they both mortally wounded him to the point that they had to throw Gilliman into stasis for 10,000 years. Because they knew if they woke him up, he would just die. So, Calgar, I believe a librarian of the Ultramarines, a Eldar, Saint Celestine of the Sisters, and there's one more character, I think it's an Adeptus Mechanicus, are all doing their own kind of thing. They're brought together, and they wind up in Gilliman's tomb. They get attacked by Chaos. The Eldar has been having premonitions. They have this special new armor that's just pretty much made for Primarchs. And essentially, once they strap it onto him, it starts to heal his body faster than the mortal wound can kill him. It's a whole event called the Resurrection of Gilliman. And Gilliman shows up. He's like, cool, time to fuck up chaos. He immediately starts fucking up chaos. He used the Emperor's Sword. The Emperor's Sword is a giant flaming greatsword. He's really cool. He is also the Boy Scout. Like I said, they're considered like the default chapter. So Ultramarines are sort of hated in the tabletop for those reasons.
So they're like the meta pick that everybody goes for.
Not necessarily the meta. They're probably just the easiest to get into because, like I said, they're on all the shit. There is no shortage of Ultramarines. You can play Ultramarines in kind of whatever fashion you see fit because they have so many units that you can pick and choose. Hey, you want to do long range, far off in the distance Ultramarines? Sure. You want to use tanks? Sure. You want to be melee specialists? Sure. You can do whatever you want with them.
So with the one picture that you sent us the other day of that one nerd trying to do that little shit tactic, and then he got countered by the other guy. What were they playing? Do you remember?
I believe the shit nerd was playing White Scars, which are the jet bike guys. They're the Mongolian ones. And the other guy was playing Tau, which are the railgun guys. And he was using specifically a unit of Tau called Kroot, which have the scout thing, which means they can be deployed on enemy lines if they're not within a certain distance of other models.
I got you. Okay. You know, I know this is.
Did you want me to explain why the Emperor's a corpse, by the way?
Oh yeah, yeah. Why the fuck is that nerd a dog? What?
Okay. During the Horus Heresy, the Emperor got mortally wounded. He is trapped on what's called the Golden Throne, which is pretty much a big psychic throne that keeps chaos from just teleporting onto Earth. And over the years, he has like a healing factor. He is dying slightly faster than the healing factor. So the Emperor... No!
Emperor's New Groove.
This is what the Emperor looks like in current lore. He is just a skull on the throne. He is still there. He can still talk. But it's like fucked up and through like a robotic speaker. So like Gilliman shows up and he like starts speaking to him and he's like, liar, son, beloved, traitor. Like shit.
Don't do
he
the
just keeps
RFK
throwing
voice.
Yeah.
Liar, son.
Yeah, that's what the Emperor sounds like. He sounds like RFK. All right, next one. Death Guard. These are my favorites.
Whoa! Fuck
Guard
it,
is
what
sick.
the? What is that thing on the like middle right?
What's really fun about the Death Guard is that this picture of Mortarion, their Primarch, this is like half fan art. It's also like they couldn't do fan art that was cooler than his in-game model. So this is like fan art of the wings over top of his actual model in-game. That's how fucking sick this guy is.
Dude.
He does have wings in the tabletop, by the way.
Oh my lord.
These guys are rad.
Be not afraid, head ass. Jesus Christ.
Yep. 14 Legions Death Guard. Their Primarch's Mortarion, and their captain is Typhus. They are carriers of rot and disease and champions of the god of rot, Nurgle. Their big feat is that they are incredibly tanky, but they're also incredibly slow. Now, the in-game reason for that is they don't need to move fast because the disease already got you before they showed up. They prefer battles of attrition, as they're really hard to kill, and the longer you fight them, the less chance you're going to have because the sicker you're going to get. These are a variety of demons, mainly Nurglings, which are these guys on the right picture, the little demon guy next to him, that's a Nurgling. They also use what's called Poxwalkers, which are pretty much zombies that spread disease. And these big ones that are called Great Unclean Ones, they're really sick. Mortarion's backstory is not the most important. Hates the Emperor. Big shocker. His ascension to demonhood is actually the really interesting part, as is most of the Death Guard. So they were all kind of tricked by Typhus. Typhus was already worshipping Nurgle, and he kind of tricked them into like warp jumping right into Nurgle's realm. and this turned them all into Death Guard. Essentially, what happened is they started to rot, get filled with disease, and it was really painful. And Nurgle promised to take the pain away. Uh, he just didn't mention that they would stay like that. It just wouldn't hurt anymore. And they all kind of accepted it. Big part of Nurgle's thing is that he's about acceptance, the feeling of ennui. Mortarion actually doesn't venture out that much from the warp. He mainly just hides there with most of his guys. Typhus actually does a lot of the battles for the Death Guard. He leads a small troop. I forget what they're called. I think it's the Shambling Horde or the Walking Horde or something like that. And he mainly does a lot of the fighting. Mortarion does occasionally come out to fight big battles, or if he hears that Gilliman or Lionel Johnson is in the fight. 15 Legions, 1,000 Suns. These are actually the guys I didn't know the most about. Their Primarch is Magnus the Red. The 1,000 Suns have pledged service to the Chaos God of Change, Tzeentch. As such, they're typically sorcerers and they use magic heavily in combat. Most of their main battle line isn't even real Space Marines. They're actually clouds of dust in armor being piloted by a sorcerer that's usually on the battlefield with them. Magnus has always been interested in warp sorcery. It was actually one of the reasons that him and the Emperor were not on good terms. Essentially, Magnus used like a warp ability to like teleconference with the Emperor, and it broke a psychic barrier that the Emperor had around Earth. And it's one of the reasons the Emperor can't leave the Golden Throne is because of Magnus. This was what his like moment of, I'm gonna betray the Emperor. 16 Legion, Sons of Horus, or later called the Black Legion. Before the Horus Heresy, they were also, or the Horus Heresy, the Horus Heresy, they were called the Luna Wolves. These are the troops that Horus led during the Heresy, and after his death, they were taken over by a guy called Abaddon the Despoiler. Abaddon is the closest thing that 40k has to a main villain. He goes on these big events called Black Crusades, and it's a lot of the big events in 40k are around these Black Crusades. The one of the more like namely ones is the Fall of Cadia. And Abaddon and his troop played a big part in that. The Black Legion originally were pretty much the shock troops. They were some of the elite troops out of even Space Marines before the Heresy. Now they're kind of like the counterpart to Ultramarines. They're good at everything, jack of all trades, and you can kind of play them however you want. Abaddon in the tabletop, I don't know if he currently is still a fucking problem, but I know for a while he was a massive problem in terms of the meta. 17 Legion is the Wordbearer. Wordbearers. And the Primarch Lorgar with his captain Erebus. Wordbearers are religious zealots who originally worshipped the Emperor as a god. However, the Emperor is an r/atheist Andy, and he does not like religion in any form, even if he is the god of it.
Big fan of Erebus's subtitle.
Yeah, that's lore accurate actually. So when the Emperor realized that Lorgar and the Wordbearers were kind of like forcibly converting populations of planets to be worshipping the Emperor, he sent the Ultramarines down to one of the planets to burn the planet to the ground. And I say that, and you're probably thinking, they set a couple buildings on fire. The planet was reduced to ash. And he made the Wordbearers sit and watch. So after that, Lorgar was kind of not interested in worshiping this god anymore. So him and Magnus went on a pilgrimage into the warp, and he discovered some horrible truths about the Emperor and Imperium. And this was the main breaking point for him to rebel against the Emperor. Erebus, I want to talk about Erebus. He's one of the main driving forces for the Horus Heresy. Erebus is mentioned several points throughout the Horus Heresy, and he has manipulated a lot of people into turning to chaos. Lorgar being pseudo one of them, Angron and Karn being another. Um, he is one of Chaos's best people because he loves turning people to chaos. The word bearers themselves aren't that strong in the lore. The main way they fight is actually kind of interesting. They use their like worship and their knowledge of rituals to summon really strong demons or to get voluntarily possessed by them. And possessed Space Marines are incredibly dangerous and really strong. Another neat thing is that Lorgar and Erebus are still alive. They're still patrolling the galaxy. However, they really haven't made their presence all that known, and nobody even really knows what they look like after all this time. 18th chapter, Salamanders. I love Salamanders. These guys are fucking dope. Their Primarch is Vulcan. They have a chapter master named Tushan, and they have a different kind of leader called a Forge Father named Vulcan Histan. Salamanders are the physically largest of the Space Marines, and they focus primarily on flame weaponry. Mainly things like heavy flamers and flame tanks. Interestingly, even with this, the flame weaponry, they're actually one of the nicest out of the Space Marine legions. They actually really care about civilian casualties. They are one of the few ones that go on rescue missions for planets. They defend civilian populations. It's a really interesting thing. They're actually pretty nice to like, and they give respect to normal humans, where a lot of the Space Marines really don't. Vulcan is the largest of the Primarchs, and him and the Emperor share a trait which I fucking hate. It's fucking stupid. It's called being a perpetual. Essentially, Vulcan and the Emperor can never die. They just have a respawn timer, and is really fucking dumb. But the last time Vulcan died, he didn't come back right away. And he found the Salamanders found a notebook that he had written, essentially, saying that he had scattered a bunch of artifacts across the galaxy, and when they were all found, he would return. The Salamanders created a new type of leader for doing this called the Forge Father, where the chapter master deals with the main chapter and main warfare. The Forge Father is exclusively looking for these relics across the galaxy, in the hopes that when he finds them all, he will bring Vulcan back to life. That being said, Salamanders fucking are dope. They're really cool. Yeah. 19th chapter is Raven Guard. It's another chapter I didn't know a ton about. Their Primarch is Corvus Corax, and their Master of Shadows or Chapter Master is Kayvon Shrike. The Raven Guard are the assassins of the Space Marines. They're focused solely on the perfect moment to strike. They're incredibly patient. They use long-range weaponry, and also they mainly use jump packs and lightning claws as their main weapon. In terms of like counterparts, the Night Lords are kind of their counterparts. The Night Lords also use lightning claws and jetpacks a lot. Corvus Corax doesn't have a ton of implications in the lore. His main one is that he fought Lorgar at one point and chased him into the warp and was pretty much sitting outside Lorgar's castle in the warp, just picking off word bearers one by one. And he spent so much time in the warp that he actually got like not chaos corrupted, but his physical form was corrupted, and now he is like a bird demon thing in the warp. No one's seen him outside of Lorgar, and it is assumed that he is dead in the warp because Lorgar is out in the regular world and Corvus Corax is not, as far as we can tell. But there is still the chance that Corvus Corax is just patiently following Lorgar around, waiting for that perfect moment to strike. And finally, we have the Alpha Legion. So you're noticing something immediately. The Alpha Legion is kind of unique in that they have two Primarchs, Alfarius and Omegon. They're incredibly creative with these names, I know. The Alpha Legions are the spies of the Space Marines. They focus on weakening forces by infiltrating and taking out important characters or leaders. Interestingly enough, all of the Alpha Legion have gone through reconstructive surgery to change their face so that they all look like Alfarius, their main Primarch. Um, like I said, they technically have two. So pretty much when the Chaos Gods scattered the Primarchs around the galaxy, um, Alfarius Omegon was one Primarch that got split into two in warp fuckery. And so pretty much they're two halves of the same soul. Um, so very few knew the fact that there were two of them. And in fact, they actually swapped places for a long time. So Omegon was leading the Alpha Legion, saying he was Alfarius, and Alfarius was being second command, saying he was Omegon. Now, when the Horus Heresy happened, Dorn killed Alfarius, who was actually Omegon. And Omegon, who was actually Alfarius, changed his name to Alfarius in honor of his dead brother, Alfarius, who was actually Omegon.
Oh my, I'm too fucking stupid, dude. Fuck.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
So this is all the main. This is the first founding. These are a lot of the main chapters that you could see in the tabletop. There's a lot of the main ones across the lore. Before I go into some of the minor foundings and the other ones, are there any questions?
Fuck. I don't even know, dog. Who's the snipey guys? Did I see sniper rifles?
Yeah, that was on these guys.
Yeah, that shit looks cool. Do they just
That's Raven.
shoot? They just shoot fucking rails at people? Because it sounds like it in
Nah, they
this
shoot
shit.
guns.
Well, I know, but like when they shoot the gun, does it like just shoot a big fucking rail at people? Because good lord, I feel like every gun in 40K is just like let's make a fucking ship as a gun. Boom, you're dead.
I mean, yeah,
That's rad as fuck though. I like their armor. Their armor is really sick.
yeah. This armor actually does the beak helmet. There is an in-lore reason for why they have beaks. It's that there are extra sensors implanted in the beak so that they can track and like pretty much so they can track better. Um, Other Space Marines call them beakies whenever they have the beak helmet, which I thought is really funny.
That's cute.
Yeah, so the Raven Guard mainly have the beak helmets, and they're generally called beakies.
Beakies.
All right.
So fucking. So do they all look the same? The Alpha Legion?
Yes, all of them look like Alfarius and Omegon, which is pretty much olive skin, bald guy. Now, Primarchs are generally bigger than most standard Space Marines. Alfarius and Omegon, because they were split in two, are actually around the same size as a standard Space Marine. So it's really common for there to be a normal Alpha Legion guy who is claiming to be Alfarius, but he's not. And nobody can really tell, except if the Alpha Legion can tell.
What's that movie, man? What's the one movie where they all say like that big group of people just keep saying that they're this one dude? What is that movie?
I am Spartacus.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of do that.
Prequel to I Am Legend.
Yeah, that's a wild series. Prequel to I Am Sam.
Jeez.
All right, let's go forward to some of the more minor chapters. Let's start off with Black Templars. I picked the lowest res image I possibly could. I'm realizing that now. So Black Templars, they're definitely out of the later foundings the most relevant, as they're actually the only one from the later foundings that currently has its own codex, meaning that they have their own rule book for the tabletop. So they're pretty prevalent. They're a successor chapter to the Imperial Fists. The thing that makes Black Templars really unique compared to a lot of the other ones, they have extreme zealotry to the Emperor. So much so that they constantly violate the Codex Astartes by going over that 1,000-unit cap I talked about again. Now remember, the Space Wolves do that by having such big dick energy that Gilliman's like, I'm not fucking trying. I'm not even trying. The Black Templars fucking lawyered up They were straight up like, all right, well, we'll just create our own subchapters using Black Templar gene seed. They'll all report to a marshal, and we'll have all the marshals report to a high marshal. So we're all Black Templars, but those are the subchapters of the Black Templars. They're all just Black Templars. And nobody knows how many Black Templars there currently are. It's estimated there are 6,000, which would make them the biggest loyalist Space Marine chapter.
Presidents of racism.
Yes, yeah. So the High Marshal Helbrecht is the president of racism. The most racist man alive is in the Templar themed army. I know. Can you believe it? The Black Templars fucking hate anyone that's not human. To a crazy degree. Like, Space Marines generally don't like Xenos anyway, but Black Templars really don't like Xenos. Like, so the elves. I've talked about the elves and the dwarves, Votan, the Leagues of Votan. And even Tau. They'll occasionally work with the Imperium. They will. They'll ally with them for like short periods of time. If the Eldar or the Tau or Votan send like an emissary kind of ship to the Black Templars, that motherfucker is coming back on fire. They burn Xenos at the stake. They hate them. They do not want anything to do with them. They're kind of sick.
They're kind of sick.
Yeah, the racist guys, they're kind of sick. I'm not gonna lie. They also all rock bowl cuts, which is pretty funny because they're like monks. You get it? They're like fucking.
Oh my god, dude, get bent.
Next up is the size of the Emperor. These guys I actually found out about because they're in an upcoming 40k animation from Games Workshop. So I thought they were pretty sick. They're from the third founding. They were very unlucky as their homeworld was invaded by the Tyranid High Fleet Kraken. So pretty much means that world is dead. They were nearly wiped out, but they were contacted by a guy named Belisarius Call. Belisarius Call is from the Mechanicus, who are like the engineers of the Imperium. And he had this fun little idea to create better Space Marines. And he started with these guys because he figured if he fucked up, no one cared. They were already half dead. So they were the first ones to get what is now called the Primaris Marines. Well, they were one of the first ones to get Primaris Marines, which are essentially bigger, stronger, faster Space Marines. Since this, Primaris Space Marines have been adopted into most of the other chapters, and the new ones going forward are generally going to be using Primaris Space Marines as their starting point. The Primaris Space Marines introduction was also called its own founding. It was called like the Ultima founding. I did not feel like that was super worth mentioning, as I figured I just mentioned it here. Next up, we have the Exorcists. These guys are kind of sick.
I love that sword. That sword is sick.
The Exorcists are another. They're from the 13th founding. They are another successor chapter to the Imperial Fists. The 13th founding is considered. It's called the Dark Founding, as there's only 2 confirmed chapters, and they're both really like mysterious and don't have a lot of knowledge known about them. Exorcists are a mysterious chapter that has some pretty interesting initiation techniques. So to become a full-fledged member of the Exorcist, you must spend some time as what's called a demon host, which you let yourself get possessed by a demon, and then you have to cast the demon out. If you cannot cast a demon out, they kill you. Now, the interesting thing is that the ones that don't do it, it seems that the Exorcist gene seed has this kind of like unique ability to be a sort of prison for demons. So if you get possessed by a demon, you can't cast it out. They kill you for being possessed by a demon. That demon is stuck in that body forever now.
Oh my.
Yeah, so they also now have pretty much a pile of dead initiates on their homeworld that they keep locked behind a big fucking door because all the bodies are full of demons.
That's sick.
You'll notice here that they're fighting Black Templars. Black Templars and Exorcists are both loyal to the Emperor. This is how much Black Templars hate Xenos. They're willing to fight loyalist factions who have anything to do with anyone who's not Imperium. All right, next up is the 21st Founding, or the Cursed Founding.
Hmm.
The 21st Founding is named the Cursed Founding because pretty much every chapter in here was fucked over in some way or had some really bad thing happen with their gene seed. Out of the ones shown here, Lamenters are probably the most notable of them. Lamenters are played a lot and they have a lot of fan love, because they're kind of just unlucky. They're kind of like salamanders, where they generally cared about civilian casualties. They also really cared about other Space Marine casualties, and they are essentially extinct now because they kept going on these rescue missions, and they were even actually praised by Gilliman himself, but then denied the praise because they felt that they had lost too many people, thus making Ultramarines hate them. And later on, they fight another chapter called the Minotaurs, who pretty much beat them into non-existence. There is currently one confirmed member of the Lamenters still alive. He is in the Space Marine Special Forces called the Death Watch, who I'm now realizing I didn't actually make a slide on. Oh well.
Tell us about it.
Later. I have an honorable mention section. Yeah, so there's one Lamenter left. He's a Dreadnought, so he's been around forever, and he's in the Death Watch. Black Dragons are another one. They had some really crazy abnormalities with gene seed. So pretty much they grow bone appendages from their arms, which is pretty much they grow big spikes out of the back of their arms and shit. They also have incredibly sharp teeth, and they started secreting poison from these fangs. So they kind of look like fucking demons. It's also implied that they do sometimes just kidnap loyalist Space Marines and eat them every once in a while. Not sure really why, but because of the way they look, they rarely interact with other Space Marines, because most other of them, especially if they run the Black Templars, are just going to kill them on sight. Next up is a chapter called the Firehawks. Firehawks pretty much disappeared into the warp one day, and they were assumed dead for a very long time. And then there was a planet that's being attacked by I believe it was an orc invasion, and the Imperial Guard was losing. Suddenly, a bunch of Space Marines who were fully on fire, their armor covered in bones, just wipes all the fucking orcs out. Wipes them all clean off. And on top of the corpses of all the orcs was a banner of the Firehawks. Pretty much the Firehawks had been warp corrupted, but they were still alive. But they're so warp tainted that they know going back to the Imperium would pretty much lead to them all being dead. So they kind of patrol around as this ghost crew of Space Marines, just kind of helping out where they can.
Hey Kyle, I think the stream froze.
What? I've been on this chat. I've been on this slide for a while.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, each of these pictures. First one's Lamenters. Second one is Black Dragon. Third one is Legion of the Damned.
Ah,
Yeah, they're all different ones. Sorry, I don't know if I made that clear.
you did,
Okay.
but now you did.
One of the other ones I want to talk about is Minotaurs. These are the guys who beat the Lamenters pretty much into existence. So I've called the Black Templars racist a few times. The Minotaurs are the epitome of I'm not racist, I hate everyone equally. So much so they hate loyalist Space Marines too. Pretty much if you're not a Minotaur, they fucking hate you. They're really isolated because of this, because pretty much if they show up and there's another Space Marine faction, doesn't matter if they're loyalist or not, the Minotaurs are probably going to fight you. One of the cool things they do is they fight with their full 1,000 units whenever they go into a battle. Other Space Marine chapters do not do this. Generally, they leave a certain amount behind just in case. Nope. If the Minotaurs show up to a planet to fight, they send fucking everybody. There's 3 other ones from the Curse Founding. One of them is what's called the Flame Falcons. I know, Firehawks and Flame Falcons in the same founding. Are you fucking kidding me, GW? The Flame Falcons were, they started spontaneously combusting, but the fire didn't hurt them. And another faction called the Grey Knights wiped them out because of this, because they were like, oh, that's warp. Yeah, fucking kill them. One of them is Sons of Antaeus. Sons of Antaeus were pretty much just like slightly stronger Space Marines. I think most of them are dead now. There's very few Sons of Antaeus left. And the other one, I do not actually remember, but I do know they went Chaos, which is another reason this was called the Cursed Founding. All right. We got the honorable mention section. Grey Knights. These guys are fucking rad. Grey Knights are really unique when it comes to Space Marines. So before the Horus Heresy, the Emperor and his right-hand man, Malkador the Sigillite, decided to form an elite group of Space Marines specifically designed to fight demons in secret. Malkador picked 8 Space Marines from various chapters and 4 normal human lords. The Space Marines set up a base hidden on a moon of, I believe, Jupiter, and they spent thousands of years training. The 4 human lords laid the groundwork for what would become the Inquisition, which is a very important institution in the lore of 40k. When the Grey Knights resurfaced, the Inquisition wrote them into history as a lost chapter from the Second Founding. They're incredibly technologically advanced because the Emperor gave them all of his best shit. They're also all incredibly powerful psychers, so they're very psychically attuned. This makes them really, really good at fighting demons and chaos. And that's generally what they do. They kind of show up just around fighting demons whenever they possibly can. But they have a Knights of the Round Table vibe, which is really sick. Last up is Custodes. Custodes is a personal guard of the Emperor. They reside in the Imperial Palace on Terra. They have started to venture out of the Imperial Palace, mainly to hunt down specific traitors or Xenos if they're getting too close to Earth. But there is a wandering group of Custodes just kind of out in the universe helping out where they can. They're kind of different than Space Marines. Mainly that the original Custodians were created by the Emperor personally, whereas most of the original Space Marines have died out. A lot of the Custodes are direct descendants of those guys. They used to do this thing, which is really funny. Was pretty much that the Custodes were so bored protecting the Emperor, they had the idea to do what's called a blood game. And what they would do is they would have a group of Custodes outside the palace try and break into the palace, and a group of Custodes inside the palace try to stop them. And it started out because Alfarius was doing that to prove how weak the palace defenses were, and it turned to kind of a game for the Custodians to also find any weaknesses in their defense. There is a book about the word bearers where they have some Custodians in it, and they are described as incapable of fighting as a unit. Whereas Space Marines excel in fighting in squads and regiments and platoons and things like that, Custodians are warriors. They're not soldiers. They're fighting a singular battle. And he in the book, the word bearer claimed that this was a weakness, but also said that even one of them could have killed all of his word bearers before they even got a shot off on him. By whoever that was.
Sabrina. Sabrina is the weakest link.
Rip, dude. Can't stand the Warhammer. Literally, my last fucking slide. I will very briefly mention Deathwatch. Deathwatch is like a special forces of Space Marines. They generally get pulled from every chapter, from all over. They're really cool. They wear like all black armor. They have like all the writing on the shoulder pads, which is pretty sick. They do a lot, and they can be played with a lot of the normal Loyalist Space Marines. You can have usually like a Death Watch like squad with like the Loyalist Space Marines on the tabletop. So they're pretty sick, and it lets you like kind of mix and match like sigils because they'll usually wear all black with like whatever symbol they chapter they're from. So like an Ultramarine will have like the Omega on a symbol and the fist one of the fists. Like it's pretty sick. And thank you. Are there any
Yay!
more questions?
When's the next PowerPoint on the monsters?
I'll kill myself.
I want
I
to
can,
see the
the
monsters.
Xenos one is not. The Xenos one would not. It would be going more in depth into the Xenos ones. That would be the long
Me,
one.
next PowerPoint's Twilight.
True. I'm waiting for the
Oh
new
yeah,
one to
that's
come
true.
out.
All right.
I thought it was a series.
Is it serious? Fuck, I don't know anymore.
Hell yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Do you feel you
I
have
missed a
better
lot of it, but thank
understanding?
you.
Oh yeah, I recorded it.
Yeah, give me the first half. Things you missed. Space wolves are furries.